Hey, thank you so much. Hariharsudhan. I'm a native of Chennai. I grew up about 8 kilometers away from here, so I actually grew up admiring this institution, so it's an absolute privilege and honor to be here. Thank you for having us. And Chris, fantastic speech. It's going to be a bit of a tough act to follow. I'll try and do my best. But one thing I actually realized as you were speaking, right? So the Betamax versus VHS analogy, I use that often too. And then I looked around the room and I recognized that half the room may not actually understand that analogy. So we're going to probably try and upgrade that a little bit. So PlayStation versus Xbox analogy, that probably will resonate a bit. Professor Satya started off this morning saying, if you actually try and go after all of the above, then it actually ends up being none of the above. 99 out of 100 times, Satya, you will be absolutely spot on. But this one problem, energy transition, you probably want to reconsider that. Because I think the answer is all of the above. And Chris actually passionately and eloquently discussed more about how there needs to be a concerted effort from every player in the ecosystem, right? I mean, he didn't leave anyone out. It's industry, it's startup, it's academia, it's government, it's the society at large, wanting to play a big role in actually making this happen. Because the purpose behind this consortium, and something that Shell deeply believes in, is something that's so critical to the future of this planet that we really can't leave any stone unturned. So that's a bit of my perspective, organization's perspective, in terms of how we look at that. Maybe a bit of an introduction about Shell. I'll try and actually go along similar lines of what Chris did, talk a little about our strategy so that you understand where we're coming from. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not a technologist. I'm actually much more in the digital space, focusing more on strategy and digital. So I'm definitely not going to talk about direct type of technologies. But if you want to talk about how digital plays a role in that, I'm happy to have a conversation. But just to give you a bit of a flavor, Shell made about $260 billion in revenue last year. We're an energy company. This morning I was connecting with Professor Mahesh. He asked the question, so every oil and gas company is now going into the energy space. Well, if you look at hydrocarbons, at the end of the day, they are actually an energy source. So for us, we've always been an energy company. We used to be called as oil and gas in the past. We are being called as an energy company now, and we'll continue to play in this space. Shell came up with a new strategy in 2020. We call it the Powering Progress strategy. So I'll talk about that a little bit, and then I'll try and actually talk about how do we see the pathways towards decarbonization, and what are some of the roles that a consortium like this can actually play in that. First and foremost, commercial enterprise, so we actually need to make sure we generate shareholder return. Our shareholders are actually common folks like you and I, but also massive pension funds, so making sure that we are able to provide them with adequate return is a fundamental objective of the organization. We've done this by structuring our businesses along 3 key pillars. The first one is our growth business, which is actually about our retail stations, the fuels business that we actually provide to our retail and business customers. It is also about low carbon fuels, looking at the hydrogen economy, looking at renewable power generation, but also we focus significantly on decarbonization. We believe that as an energy company, we bring in significant expertise in understanding pathways towards decarbonization, and we can work with our customers and the society at large to chart out pathways regarding that. The second business pillar is our transition business. It's the LNG business that we have along with our chemicals and products business. We are going to need energy to actually power this world. We don't have enough renewable energy today, and Shell has made a significant commitment towards finding continued ways of providing the world with its energy needs. From that perspective, LNG is a significant part of that future. Hydrocarbons, as Chris mentioned, is going to continue to play a key role over the next 10, 20 years. We don't know what that time frame is, but we do know that it's actually a significant time frame. And try as we may, hydrocarbons also play a significant role in our day-to-day lives. So we need to continue to make sure that we contribute to that perspective, and that's where our transition pillar comes in, through energy products as well as through our chemicals and products divisions. And lastly is our upstream pillar. We can't suddenly stop running all the cars and the trucks that we have on the road because we can't convert all of them into EV and pace. Therefore, we need to continue to have traditional hydrocarbon products in the market. And as an oil and gas company that's actually had significant track record in this space, we believe we can actually bring levels of efficiency and carbon efficient operations in this space that can actually help the world to meet its targets around climate aspirations. I'll come back to net zero emissions in a bit. Powering lives, this is actually an integral goal. So this morning, again, when I was talking with Professor Mahesh, he actually talked about why is an energy company interested in microgrids? We talked about that as one of the focus areas in the consortium. So why is an energy company really focused on microgrids? And from that perspective, we made a significant commitment as an organization to bring energy to people that don't have it. By 2030, we actually want to bring energy to millions of people that don't have access to energy today. And that is going to look at ways in which we try and do accessibility rollouts when it comes to power infrastructure. If you look at traditional ways in which we rolled out power, it was always through extending the grid. And in developing countries like India, that's not always going to be a viable option, purely because of the economics involved. So for us, looking at how we execute that strategy around powering lives, bringing accessibility to energy for vast sections of the population that have never had access to it, is an integral part of how we look at executing our strategy. Respecting nature has always been a key principle of how we operate our business. In our traditional oil and gas businesses, we've always been conscious about how we impact the environment, and we always look for ways to minimize it. We've always looked at ways to actually reduce the amount of waste that we generate. We've looked at ways to actually make sure that we improve circularity of the products that we actually consume as well as we sell. And lastly, we look at ways in which we can recycle some of the products that we generate, right? But now we've added to that portfolio significantly through our nature-based solutions business, working with a variety of stakeholders to look at how do we really build out our portfolio to actually look at biodiversity, to look at consumption of natural resources that are in a way that is sustainable and allow us to actually go through energy transition successfully. Talk about net zero emissions as a key area of focus for us. Every oil and gas company, every energy company has made a significant commitment. We're not the only ones that have actually made a commitment to be net zero by 2050. We seriously believe that our carbon emission, carbon footprint has actually peaked in 2018. We've been working towards reducing that, and that includes reducing a significant part of our emissions footprint across all three scope areas, 1, 2, and 3. One is much more in our direct influence, so we actually have a more active role in that space. Scopes 2, again, with our partners, so slightly lower influence, but still much more within the ambit of how we can actually try and structure that. Scope 3 is the one where we actually have to work with our customers and customers' to try and see how do we really set it up for the economy as a whole. So from that perspective, for us, every part of this is significant, and that's why we've actually set up our business to channel our energy into decarbonizing sectors, and we'll just talk about that. For us, decarbonization is actually not just a business segment, it's actually a way in which we look at how we deliver the energy needs of the future. It's easy for us to say decarbonization is a way in which we actually connect with customers and provide solutions to their needs, but it almost always looks at different ways in which we bring together solutions and make sure that we are able to actually provide those solutions in a cost-effective manner to our customers. We build into a lot of partnerships that we actually offer through customers, working backwards, trying to understand where are some of the areas that they actually have significant challenges, and therefore we actually build those solutions on a sector-by-sector basis to make sure that we are identifying, including even hard-to-abate sectors like freight, road transport, as well as cement and steel, to identify those solutions that can actually deliver impact to our customers. From our perspective, there are two major forces that are reshaping the energy system, energy transition as a whole. The energy mix is changing. We're seeing more and more renewable projects actually coming online. Shell itself is actually making a significant commitment to renewable energy generation. We've made a significant purchase in India, Spring Energy, very recently announced. which practically doubled our renewable energy generation in the last 6 months. We also see that there are newer forms of energy and newer participants that are actually entering into the generation business, and therefore we see this change not only continuing at pace, but also rapidly changing in the way in which we meet the energy needs of the future. Decarbonization, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be an integral part of how we look at meeting the energy needs, and it's not a separate standalone problem. And this is actually going to be largely driven by non-traditional participants in the market. So we won't see this as something that we will just say energy companies will look at, so we need to actually look at how do we rephrase the way in which energy needs are provided as an energy organization. Given my focus area, also see digitalization as a significant component of the reshaping of the energy system. This morning when Dr. Nikhil was actually talking about how IIT Madras was setting up its capabilities, and Dr. Concord was talking about data collection across something as simple as a sewage system, right? It's fascinating in terms of how much data we as a world are actually collecting, and therefore using all of that data to drive insights in ways in which we've actually never been able to do in the past with the computing capacity that we have at our disposal is going to be a significant game changer in terms of how the energy system is actually going to shape up. One of the things that we are absolutely strong believers in is the clean energy systems of the future. We believe that we actually can operate these systems at a significant way in which we generate returns, and therefore we actually see Shell as a significant player in this space. We see the source of energy coming from increasingly diverse sources, and therefore we need to actually prepare for an energy system that is able to not just integrate all of these sources, but really offer customers with choice around how these sources are made available to them at a place and time of their choosing, as well as at a cost that is palatable to them. Digital technology is going to be a key way in which we balance supply and demand of the future energy systems, and therefore is a critical focus area for us in terms of how we see the energy system evolving. Spoke about collaborations, the initial point in terms of how we see the energy systems of the future shaping up. When we said that we want to do all of the above in a space like that, no single organization is going to be able to actually just take all of its resources and do all of the above, which means we need to have a significant part of our energy diverted into consortiums and collaborations like this, where we actually come together, not just as corporates, but also with corporates joining forces with academia, with startups, and a variety of players in the ecosystem to make sure that we are able to deliver on the solutions that we need for the future. The areas that the consortium has identified as focus, there are a number of these areas that are quite exciting to us. We identified a couple of those as being absolutely critical in the immediate term for us to actually start focusing on. We have already started working with Professor Satya on energy modeling. We're starting to work with Professor Krishna on the microgrid space, and we'll also look at starting to work with Professor Rajneesh on carbon capture, utilization, sequestration. These are all important areas for Shell as an organization to make sure that we are able to really transition ourselves into a net zero organization over the next few years, and then rise up to meet the challenges of energy requirements across the world. I'll pause there, happy to take your questions.